Eshi thought the worst part of her day was the ripped dress seam on a busy Seoul street. She was wrong. The worst part was realizing the tinted car window she'd been using as a mirror belonged to someone who was watching her the entire time. Someone powerful. Someone who decided in that exact moment that he wasn't going to let her disappear into the crowd. And when Seo Kang-jun wanted something, he didn't just ask. He rearranged the world until saying no became impossible. The pin slipped from between Ishe's teeth for the third time, and she wanted to scream. Not here. Not now. Not on Gangnam Avenue, where every person walking past looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine, and she was crouched beside a car trying to hold her dress together with spit and prayers. The wind had ripped the side seam clean open. One moment she'd been rushing toward the subway, fabric samples tucked under her arm, already calculating if she could skip dinner to save money. The next moment, cold air hit her hip and she knew. The dress was done. She ducked beside the nearest car, a black one with windows so dark she could barely see her reflection. Good. She could use it as a mirror. Her fingers worked fast, pulling the small sewing kit from her bag. She always carried one. Had to. When you only owned 5 dresses and lived on a scholarship that barely covered rent, you learned to fix things on the spot. The light was red. Traffic hummed around her. She pushed the pin through fabric, muttering in Zulu under her breath. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her head, the same words she'd heard 1,000 times growing up in Durban. A woman who can fix her own clothes will never be helpless. Well, go-go, Ishi thought. I'm fixing my clothes in the middle of Seoul beside someone's car, and I feel pretty helpless. She bit down on another pin, focused completely on the seam. The fabric was cheap cotton, already stressed from too many washes. She needed 3, maybe 4 pins to hold it until she got back to her tiny apartment in Gwanak. Then she could stitch it properly. If she had thread left, the window beside her head moved. She didn't notice at first. Her eyes were on the way the pin slid through, on keeping her hands steady. But then she felt it, that specific prickling sensation when someone is watching you. She looked up and saw him. A man sat in the back seat of the car, and he was staring directly at her, not glancing, not looking away politely, staring. His face was unreadable, all sharp lines and dark eyes, and he held a phone in one hand, like he'd been in the middle of something important before she became more interesting. Ishi's stomach dropped. She grabbed her bag, shoved the pins inside, and walked away so fast she nearly tripped. Her face burned, her hands shook. Behind her she heard nothing. No window rolling back up, no car driving away. She didn't look back. 3 blocks later, standing in the subway station with her heart still pounding, she pressed her hand against the pinned seam and laughed. It came out shaky. Of course. On the worst day of a bad week, she'd accidentally flashed some rich man in the back of a car that probably belonged in a museum. She'd never see him again. Seoul was huge. It didn't matter, except when she got home that night and lay in bed staring at the ceiling of the apartment she shared with her roommate Min Soo-ah. She kept seeing his face, the way he'd looked at her, not disgusted, not amused, curious, like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve. She rolled over and pulled the blanket up to her chin. Forget it. Forget him. She had a thesis to finish, a scholarship review in 2 months, and absolutely zero time to think about some stranger in a car. 2 days later, her phone rang. Aisha was in the university library, surrounded by books on traditional Korean textiles, when the unknown number flashed across her screen. She almost didn't answer. Scam calls were constant in Seoul, but something made her pick up. Hello, Miss Lamini? The voice was male, polite, speaking English with a perfect Seoul accent. This is Kim Han Textile Studio. We received your inquiry from 3 months ago about access to our Pojagi silk collection. Ishi sat up straight. Kim Han Studio had rejected her. Twice. She'd sent a 3rd email 2 weeks ago and hadn't even gotten a response. Yes, she said carefully, I'm still very interested. We'd like to offer you exclusive access to our archives. We have over 200 samples from the Joseon period, including several pieces that have never been photographed for academic use. Would you be available this week? Her heart jumped into her throat. This was exactly what she needed for her thesis, the kind of access that could make her entire research argument bulletproof. Yes, she said. Absolutely. When? Tomorrow, if that works for you. 10 in the morning? I'll be there. She hung up and stared at her phone. Then she texted Soo-ah. Kim Han Studio just called me. They're giving me archive access. The reply came 30 seconds later. The Kim Han Studio? The one that told you no 3 times? Yes. Nobody just gives things away in Seoul, especially not to foreign students. Ishe read the message twice. Su-ah had lived in Seoul her whole life. She understood how things worked here in ways Eshe was still learning. But this felt earned. She'd written a detailed proposal. She'd explained her research. Maybe someone finally read it properly. She texted back, maybe they just liked my work. Su-ah sent a string of doubtful emojis. Ishe put her phone face down and went back to her books. She wasn't going to question good luck. She'd had so little of it lately. The next morning, the Kim Han archive was everything she'd dreamed of and more. The studio owner, an elderly woman with silver hair and careful hands, walked her through rows of preserved fabric. Ishe took notes until her hand cramped. She photographed samples. She asked 100 questions, and the owner answered every single one. When she left 3 hours later, she felt like she was floating. On the subway ride back to campus, she pulled out her phone to text her thesis advisor back in South Africa. Professor Nkosi had been the one to encourage her to apply for the Seoul exchange program. She'd want to hear about this. But when Ishe opened her email to get the professor's new number, she saw something else. A message from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line read, CO Group Partnership Opportunity. She frowned and opened it. Dear Ms. Dlamini, we have been following your research on textile fusion with great interest. CO Group's Cultural Foundation would like to invite you to discuss a potential partnership. We believe your work aligns with our mission to bridge African and Korean artistic traditions. Please let us know your availability for a preliminary meeting. Ishe read it 3 times. CO Group. She knew that name. Everyone in Seoul knew that name. They owned half the luxury buildings in Gangnam. She'd walked past their headquarters once. A glass building that seemed to touch the sky. Why would they contact her? She checked the email signature. It listed a phone number and an office address. Legitimate. Professional. She forwarded it to Professor Nkosi with a single question. Is this real? The professor replied an hour later. If it is, this could change everything for you. CO Group funding would open doors across Asia. Be careful, but be smart. This is the kind of opportunity that doesn't come twice. Ishe saved the email and didn't reply. Not yet. Something felt strange. 2 rejections turned into enthusiastic yes within 48 hours. An email from one of the biggest companies in Korea. She wanted to believe it was her work, that someone had finally seen what she was trying to build. But Su-ah's words kept circling back. Nobody just gives things away in Seoul. That afternoon, Aisha went to her favorite spot on campus, a bench near the Textile Arts Building, tucked beside a small garden that most students ignored. She sat with her notebook and tried to sketch out her next thesis chapter, but her mind kept wandering. She looked up and saw him, the man from the car. He was sitting in the campus cafe across the pathway, visible through the window. He had a laptop open in front of him, but he wasn't looking at it. He was looking at her. Their eyes met. Ishi's breath caught. He didn't look away, didn't pretend he'd been looking at something else, just held her gaze for 3 long seconds, then went back to his laptop like nothing had happened. She stood up so fast her notebook fell to the ground. This wasn't a coincidence. Seoul had 10 million people, and he just happened to be at her university. She shoved her notebook into her bag and walked in the opposite direction, toward the textile building. Her hands were shaking. When she glanced back, he was gone. That night, she told Su-ah everything. They sat on the floor of their tiny apartment, a pot of ramen between them, and Ishe spilled it all. The car, the window, the way he'd looked at her, and now, seeing him again on campus. Su-ah listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious with every sentence. When Aish finished, Su-ah set down her chopsticks. Describe him again. Tall, late 30s maybe, dark hair. He was wearing a black suit. He looked, I don't know, expensive. Like he didn't belong at a university cafe. Su-ah pulled out her phone and typed something. Then she turned the screen toward Eshe. Is this him? Eshe looked at the image. Her stomach flipped. It was him. Same face. Same unreadable expression. He was standing beside an older woman at some kind of formal event, and the caption underneath read, Seo Kang-jun, CEO of CO Group at the annual trade summit. Oh no, Eshe whispered. Oh yes, Su-ah said. Eshe, that's Seo Kang-jun. His family owns half of Seoul, and if he's following you, nothing about your life right now is a coincidence. Now I need you to do something really important. If you're already hooked by this story, if you want to know what happens when a man who owns half of Seoul decides he wants something he can't just buy, hit that like button. Drop a comment and tell me what you think Eshe should do. Run? Confront him? And if you're new here, stick around because this story is about to get so much more complicated. Eshe didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed with her phone in her hand, staring at the photo of Seo Kang-jun. Sua had sent her 3 articles before going to bed. All of them painted the same picture. Youngest CEO in Seo Group history. Took over the company at 30. Expanded into 6 countries within 3 years. Known for being private, ruthless in business, and completely untouchable. There were photos of him at charity galas, trade conferences, luxury brand launches. Always in a suit, always alone, never smiling. In one article, a journalist had written, Seo Kang-jun doesn't attend events to be seen. He attends because his presence alone shifts the room. Ishi clicked her phone off and pressed her palms against her eyes. Why her? She was nobody. A scholarship student from Durban who could barely afford meals. She wore the same 5 dresses on rotation and fixed them with pins when they ripped. What could a man like that possibly want from her? The answer came the next day. She was leaving her textile history class when her phone buzzed. Another email. Same address as before. Miss Dlamini, we noticed you have not yet responded to our partnership inquiry, Mr. CEO would like to meet with you personally to discuss the opportunity. Would you be available tomorrow at 2 p.m. at CEO Group headquarters? Her hands went cold. Mr. CEO would like to meet with you personally. She stood in the middle of the hallway, students flowing around her, and felt the world tilt. This wasn't about her research. This was about him. She deleted the email and shoved her phone into her bag. No, absolutely not. Whatever this was, she wanted no part of it. But that evening, when she checked her scholarship portal to upload a progress report, she saw something that made her blood turn to ice. A notification at the top of the page. Your scholarship's status is currently under review. Please ensure all documentation is up to date. Reviews typically take 4 to 6 weeks. She clicked on it with shaking hands. Her scholarship wasn't supposed to be under review. She'd submitted everything on time. Her grades were perfect. There was no reason for this, unless someone had triggered it. She scrolled down to the sponsor information, something she'd barely glanced at when she'd first accepted the scholarship. Primary sponsor, Korea South Africa Cultural Exchange Foundation. Secondary sponsor, Seo Cultural Foundation. The room spun. Her scholarship, her visa, her entire reason for being in Korea. It was tied to his family's foundation. She called Soo-ah. He owns my scholarship. Soo-ah arrived at the apartment 20 minutes later with red bean buns and the kind of serious expression that meant she'd already been thinking about this. They sat on the floor again, the buns forgotten. Okay, Soo-ah said. Let's think this through. He saw you by the car. Then suddenly, you're getting opportunities you didn't have before. Then he shows up at your campus. Now your scholarship is under review, right after you ignored his meeting request. You think he's threatening me? I think he's showing you what he can do. This is how powerful people operate here. They don't threaten directly. They just move things around you until you understand the shape of the cage. Ishi pulled her knees to her chest. So what do I do? You have 3 choices. 1. You meet with him and figure out what he actually wants. 2. You try to finish your thesis in the next 6 weeks and leave Korea before the review is done. 3. You do nothing and hope this all goes away. Option 3 isn't real. No, Soo-ah agreed. It's not. Ishi dropped her head onto her knees. She'd come to Seoul to study, to learn, to build something that mattered. And now she was trapped in some bizarre situation with a man who could destroy her entire future with a single phone call. I'll take the meeting, she said quietly. Are you sure? No, but I need to know what this is. I can't run from something I don't understand. The next day, Eshe stood outside Seo Group headquarters and tried to remember how to breathe. The building was glass and steel, the kind of place that made you feel small just by existing near it. People in perfect suits walked in and out, all of them moving with purpose. She looked down at her own dress, one she'd made herself from fabric she'd bought at Dongdaemun Market. It was clean. It was neat. But it definitely didn't belong here. She went inside anyway. The lobby was cold and enormous. A receptionist looked up as she approached, her smile polite but evaluating. I have a meeting with Mr. Seo, Eshe said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. 2 p.m. My name is Eshe Dlamini. The receptionist typed something, then nodded. 23rd floor. Someone will meet you at the elevator. Eshe rode the elevator up, watching the numbers climb, feeling her stomach sink with each floor. When the doors opened, A woman in a gray suit was waiting. "Miss Dlamini, please follow me." They walked down a hallway with white walls and abstract art that probably cost more than Isha's entire education. The woman stopped at a large wooden door, knocked once, then opened it. "Mr. Seo, Miss Dlamini is here. Send her in." The woman stepped aside as she walked into the office. It was massive. Windows lined one wall, showing a view of Seoul that stretched to the mountains. A desk sat near the windows, clean except for a laptop and a single folder. And behind the desk, standing now, was Seo Kang-jun. He looked exactly the same as he had in the car. Same sharp face, same unreadable eyes. But here, in his space, he seemed even more untouchable. "Miss Dlamini," he said, "thank you for coming." She stayed near the door. "You didn't give me much choice." His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Please, sit. I'd rather stand." "Then I'll stand as well." He came around the desk but didn't move closer, just leaned against it, arms crossed, watching her with that same focused attention that had unsettled her from the beginning. "Why am I here?" Eshi asked. "I want to offer you a partnership. For my research. Yes. And the scholarship review that started the day after I ignored your first email. That's just coincidence?" He tilted his head slightly. "You're direct. You're following me. I think we're past polite." Silence filled the space between them. Then, to her complete shock, he smiled. It was small, barely there, but real. "I saw you fixing your dress," he said. "By my car. You didn't see me at first. You were completely focused on the work. You didn't care that you were on the street or that people were walking past. You just fixed the problem in front of you and moved on. So you decided to stalk me? I decided to learn who you were. Why?" He looked at her for a long moment, and she realized he was deciding how much truth to tell. "Because in the last 10 years," he said slowly, "no one has looked at me the way you did when you finally noticed I was there. And how did I look at you? Like I was in your way." Ishi blinked. "Everyone I meet wants something from me," he continued. "They smile, they defer, they calculate how to get close. But you saw me and walked away. You didn't care who I was. You just wanted to leave." I was embarrassed. You were honest. She didn't know what to say to that. He straightened and walked to the windows, giving her space. "The partnership is real. I've read your thesis proposal. Your work on blending African and Korean textile traditions is exactly the kind of project our cultural foundation was created to support. I can give you access to archives across Seoul, funding for materials, introductions to artisans who don't normally work with students. And in exchange," he turned back to her, "nothing. I don't believe you. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? Have dinner with me." The request hung in the air between them. Eshe stared at him. "You want me to have dinner with you?" "Yes. And if I say no, then you say no. The partnership offer stands either way." "What about my scholarship review?" His jaw tightened, the first crack in his controlled expression. "That wasn't me, but you can stop it." Yes. Then stop it." He pulled out his phone, typed something, and set it on the desk. 30 seconds later, it buzzed. He showed her the screen. An email confirmation. "Scholarship review canceled. Status returned to active." "It's done," he said. Esha felt something loosen in her chest, but the fear didn't leave completely. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Because I want to know you, and I'm trying to do it the right way, which is harder than I expected." There was something almost vulnerable in the way he said it, like he genuinely didn't know how to approach another person without using power as a tool. Ishi took a breath. "If I have dinner with you, it's just dinner, not a transaction, not an obligation. Just two people eating food." "Agreed. And you stop showing up places I am. If you want to see me, you ask, directly." "Agreed. And if I decide I don't want to see you again, you let me walk away, completely. No scholarship reviews, no suddenly losing opportunities. Nothing." He hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. "You don't know if you can promise that," she said quietly. "I'm trying to. Trying isn't the same as doing." "No," he admitted. "It's not." Ish picked up her bag. "I'll think about the partnership, but I'm not having dinner with you. Not yet. Not until I know you understand the difference between wanting something and controlling it." She walked to the door. "Miss Dlamini." She stopped but didn't turn around. "I'm not used to people telling me no," he said. "I know. That's the problem." She left his office, rode the elevator down, and walked out of the building into the cold Seoul afternoon. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. But she'd done it. She'd stood in front of one of the most powerful men in Seoul and set boundaries. And he'd listened, or at least, he'd tried to. Whether that was enough, she didn't know yet. But as she walked toward the subway, she felt something unexpected. Not fear, not anger, curiosity. Because Seo Kang-jun had looked at her like she was a person, not a problem to solve. And in a city where she often felt invisible, that meant something, even if it probably shouldn't. 3 days passed and Aisha heard nothing from Seo Kang-jun. She checked her email more times than she wanted to admit, looked over her shoulder on campus, scanned cafes before sitting down. Nothing. He'd actually listened. Soo-ah noticed. "You look disappointed." "I'm not disappointed. You're checking your phone every 5 minutes. I'm just making sure the scholarship is still active." Soo-ah raised one eyebrow. "Right, the scholarship. Not the fact that one of Seoul's most eligible bachelors asked you to dinner and you said no." "I said not yet. There's a difference." "Is there though?" Eshe threw a pillow at her. But Soo-ah was right. She was disappointed, which was ridiculous. She didn't want to be chased by some CEO who could ruin her life with a phone call. She wanted to finish her thesis and prove that she belonged in Seoul on her own merit. Except a small, stupid part of her had liked the way he looked at her. Like she mattered. Like she was someone worth crossing a room for. She shook the thought away and focused on her work. On the 4th day, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered carefully. "Hello? Miss Lamini, this is Young-in Soo. I work for Mr. Soud." "Okay, Mr. CEO wanted me to inform you that access to the CEO private textile archive has been arranged, if you're still interested in the partnership. The archive is available Tuesday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., no strings attached." His words, not mine. Ishi sat down on her bed. "He's serious. Mr. Seo is always serious. And he's not, he won't be there." There was a pause, and she thought she heard amusement in the man's voice. "He'll be working in an office on the same floor, but he won't disturb you unless you ask him to." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because he told me to be transparent. Apparently you value that." Despite herself, Ishe smiled. Tell him I'll be there Tuesday." "I will. Have a good evening, Miss Lamini." He hung up. Aish stared at her phone. Soo-ah poked her head into the room. "Who was that?" "Seo Kang-jun's assistant. He's giving me access to private archive." "Of course he is." Soo-ah came and sat beside her. "Esh, be careful. Men like that don't give things away. They invest." "I know, do you?" Esh looked at her friend. "I think he's lonely." Soo-ah blinked. "What?" "When I was in his office, he looked at me like he didn't know how to just talk to someone. Like every interaction he's ever had has been a negotiation. I think he's trying to figure out how to be normal, and he doesn't know how. That doesn't make him less dangerous. No, but it makes him human." Tuesday morning, Eshi stood outside the Seo Archive building in Bukshan. It was a traditional hanok, restored beautifully, tucked between modern buildings like a secret. Young-in Soo met her at the door. He was older, maybe late 40s, with kind eyes and the posture of someone who'd spent time in the military. "Miss Lamini, welcome. Let me show you around." The archive was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling wooden shelves, all climate-controlled, holding hundreds of textile samples in protective cases. Silks from the Joseon dynasty. Pojagi pieces so delicate they looked like they'd dissolve if you breathed wrong. Embroidered wrapping cloths with patterns Eshe had only seen in textbooks. "You have full access to everything," Insu said. "There's a work table here, gloves in this drawer, and a camera if you need photographs. Mr. Seo is upstairs in the office if you need anything." "Thank you." Insu nodded and left. Ishe stood alone in the archive and wanted to cry. This was what she'd dreamed of when she'd applied to study in Seoul. Access like this could make her thesis sing. She could compare techniques, trace influences, build arguments that other scholars would have to take seriously. She put on the white gloves and got to work. 2 hours disappeared. She was photographing a 19th century bojagi, completely absorbed in the tiny, perfect stitches. When she heard footsteps on the stairs, she looked up. Seo Kang-jun stood in the doorway holding 2 paper cups. "I brought tea," he said. "You've been working for a while." Ishi pulled off the gloves. "You're checking on me. I'm bringing you tea. There's a difference." She bit back a smile. "Is there, though?" He crossed the room and set both cups on the table. "Green tea. The woman at the shop said it was good for concentration." "You went to a tea shop?" "I sent someone to a tea shop." "Of course you did." He almost smiled. "Almost. May I sit?" She gestured to the chair across from her. He sat, careful not to disturb her work, and looked at the bojagi she'd been photographing. "This one is from 1870, he said. "It was used to wrap wedding gifts. The red thread symbolizes prosperity. You know the history of your own collection. My grandmother made me learn. She said if you own something beautiful and don't understand it, you're just a thief with money. Ishe picked up her tea. I like your grandmother. She'd like you too. They sat in silence for a moment. It should have been awkward, but it wasn't. It was comfortable. Why textiles? He asked. My grandmother was a seamstress in Durban. She used to make clothes for the whole neighborhood. I grew up watching her turn fabric into something that made people feel beautiful. When I found Korean pojagi in a book at university, I saw the same thing, different culture, same heart. I wanted to understand how two places so far apart could create similar art. And now I'm here, trying to prove that fusion isn't theft, that you can honor two traditions at once and create something new. He watched her with that focused attention she was starting to recognize. You're very sure of yourself. I have to be. Do you know how many people told me I was wasting my time coming to Seoul? That I should study African textiles in Africa and leave Korean culture to Koreans. I'm here because I refuse to believe that connection has borders. You're brave. I'm stubborn. There's a difference. This time he actually smiled, small but real. Her heart did a small, annoying flip. I should get back to work, she said quickly. He stood. I'll leave you to it. But Ishi? It was the first time he'd used her first name. Yes? Thank you for coming. I know it wasn't easy to trust this. I'm still deciding if I do. I know. That's why it matters. He left. Ishi sat very still, holding her tea, trying to calm the butterflies that had suddenly invaded her stomach. This was bad. She was starting to like him. Over the next 2 weeks, a pattern developed. Eshe came to the archive 3 times a week. Kang Jun brought her tea, asked about her work, and left. Sometimes he stayed for 10 minutes, sometimes an hour. He never pushed, never asked personal questions, just existed in her space, like he was learning how to be near someone without consuming them. And Eshe, despite every warning bell in her head, started looking forward to those moments. She learned things about him in fragments. He'd studied economics at Seoul National University. He hated corporate dinners but attended them anyway because his grandmother insisted. He'd taken over SEO Group when his father had a stroke and never really had a choice about the life he wanted. Do you resent it? She asked one afternoon. They were sitting in the archive, both working. Him on his laptop, her sketching pattern variations. He looked up. Resent what? Not having a choice. He considered the question. I don't know what I would have chosen instead. This is all I've ever known. That's sad. Is it? Yes, everyone should get to choose something. What did you choose? Seoul. My grandmother wanted me to stay in Durban. Get married, take over her shop. My father wanted me to study something practical like nursing. But I chose this. It was the first time I picked something just because I wanted it. How did that feel? Terrifying. And right. He looked at her like he was trying to understand a language he'd never learned. I think you're teaching me something, he said quietly. What? I'm not sure yet. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression shifted back to the cold, controlled mask she'd seen in his office. I have to go. There's a situation. Is everything okay? It will be. He left quickly, and the archive suddenly felt too quiet. That evening, Sua came home with gossip. There's a rumor going around about SEO Group. Something about a cousin challenging Kang Jun's acquisition deal in Singapore. My friend who works in finance said the family is fracturing. Ishi looked up from her sketch. A cousin, Seo Tae-young. Apparently he's always been jealous of Kang Jun. People are saying he's making moves to take power. Something cold settled in Eshe's stomach. She didn't know why, but she had a bad feeling. The next day, she found out why. She was leaving the library when a man approached her, younger than Kang Jun, maybe early 30s, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Eshe Dlamini? She stopped. Yes, I'm Seo Tae-young, Kang Jun's cousin. Do you have a moment? Every instinct told her to say no. But he was already gesturing to a nearby cafe, and people were watching, and she didn't know how to refuse without making a scene. They sat outside. He ordered coffee she didn't want. I'll be direct, Tae-young said. I know my cousin has taken an interest in you. I wanted to introduce myself and offer you some perspective. Perspective on what? On who Kang Jun really is. He leaned forward. Has he told you about the women before you? Her blood went cold. What women? Foreign students. Scholarship recipients. He does this every few years. Gets fascinated by someone new, offers them funding, gets close. And then when his family decides they're inappropriate, those women disappear. Scholarships revoked. Visas denied. One girl from Brazil had to leave Korea in less than a week. Eshi's hands tightened around her cup. I'm telling you this because I don't want to see it happen again, Tae-young continued. Kang Jun doesn't mean to hurt people, but he lives in a world where women like you, foreign, no connections, no power, you're not considered suitable. And when the family moves against you, he won't protect you. He never does.
Why are you telling me this?
'Cause I think you should have a choice. My cousin is powerful, but so am I, and unlike him, I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to help you. Help me how? Feed me information. Tell me what he's working on, who he's meeting with, what deals he's planning. In exchange, I'll make sure your scholarship stays protected. I'll make sure that when the family comes for you, and they will, you have someone on your side. Ishe stood up. No, absolutely not. Tae-young didn't move. Think about it carefully, Eshe. Your visa depends on that scholarship. Your scholarship is funded by our family foundation. One word from the right person and you're on a plane back to South Africa. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you insurance. There's a difference. He slid a business card across the table. My number. When you're ready to be smart about this, call me. He left. Ishi sat frozen, her heart pounding so hard she thought she might be sick. She pulled out her phone and called Sua. I need you to come get me. 20 minutes later, they were back at the apartment and Ishi was telling her everything. Susa paced while she listened, her expression growing darker. He's blackmailing you. I know. And he's using your visa as leverage. I know. Esh, you can't do what he's asking. If Kangjun finds out you're spying on him, I know. Ish dropped her head into her hands. But what choice do I have? If I don't help Tae-young, he'll destroy my scholarship. If I do help him, I'm betraying someone who's actually been kind to me. You think Kangjun has been kind? Compared to his cousin, yes. Sua sat beside her. Okay, let's think. What proof do we have that Tae-young can actually do what he's threatening? None, but I can't risk it. If my visa gets revoked, I lose everything. My thesis, my research, my entire future. So we need to know if he's telling the truth about the other women. And we need leverage of our own. Ishe looked at her. How do we get that? We start digging. You said there were other foreign students who disappeared. That's what Tae-young said. Then we find them. We contact them. We figure out what really happened. It took Eshe 3 days to track down the Brazilian student Tae-young had mentioned. Her name was Camila Santos, and she'd been a business student at Yonsei 2 years ago. Eshe found her through old university forums and sent a message through LinkedIn. Camila responded within hours. How did you find me? Eshe explained carefully that she was a student at Seoul National University and had heard Camila's name in connection with Seo Group. Camila's next message made her stomach drop. Whatever they offered you, say no. Just finish your program and leave. Isha asked if they could talk on the phone. Camila called her that evening. I don't like talking about this, Camila said. Her English was good but shaky. But if you're in the same situation I was, you need to know. What happened? I met Kang Jun at a university event. He was interested in my research on South American trade markets. He offered me funding through Seo Group. I said yes. We started meeting for coffee, then dinners. I don't know what I thought, that maybe he actually liked me. Eshi's chest tightened. Did he? I think so. But it didn't matter. 3 months in, I got a visit from his aunt. She told me the family didn't approve. She offered me money to end the relationship and leave Korea quietly. When I said no, my scholarship was suddenly flagged for review. My visa was questioned. I had university security asking about my attendance records, my housing, everything. Did Kang Jun know? I tried to tell him. He said he'd fix it. But he didn't, or he couldn't. I don't know which is worse. In the end, his aunt offered me enough money to pay off my student loans if I left within a week and signed an NDA. So I did. I'm so sorry. The worst part? Camila's voice cracked. I think he actually cared about me. But he cares about his family more. He always will. So whatever you think is happening between you and him, just remember, when it comes down to it, you're disposable. And he'll let you be disposed of. They talked for a few more minutes, but Ish barely heard the rest. When she hung up, she felt hollow. Su-ah had been listening on speaker. So Tae-young was telling the truth. About the pattern, yes. But I don't think Kangjun is the villain here. I think he's trapped too. That doesn't help you. No, it doesn't. Her phone buzzed. A text from Tae-young. Have you thought about my offer? She stared at it. Then she texted back. What do you need to know? His response was immediate. Good choice. I'll be in touch. Ishi felt like she was going to throw up. The next week was torture. Tae-young texted her every other day with questions. Small things at first. Where did Kang-jun go for lunch? Who did he meet with? What times did he leave the office? She answered vaguely, hating herself with every message. And meanwhile, she kept seeing Kang-jun at the archive. He brought her tea, asked about her work, told her small stories about his day. One afternoon, he showed her a photo on his phone. A piece of traditional Korean embroidery his grandmother had made. She wants to meet you, he said, as she nearly dropped her tea. What? I told her about your research. She's interested. You talked to your grandmother about me. I talked to her about everything. She's the only person in my family who tells me the truth. Aishi thought about Camila, about the aunt who'd paid her off. Does your family know you're spending time with me? Something shifted in his expression. Why do you ask? I know how families can be, about who's appropriate. He set down his cup. If you're worried about what my family thinks, don't be. I make my own decisions. Do you? The question came out sharper than she meant. He looked at her carefully. Has someone said something to you? This was her chance. She could tell him about Tae-young, about the blackmail, about everything. But Tae-young's threat echoed in her head. Your visa, your scholarship, one phone call. No, she lied. I'm just aware that I'm not exactly what families like yours expect. I don't care what they expect. You say that now. I mean it. She wanted to believe him. But Camila's words kept circling. When it comes down to it, you're disposable. That night, Tae-young called her. I need something bigger, he said. Like what? Kang-jun is finalizing an acquisition deal in Singapore. I need to know which company and when the signing is scheduled. I don't have access to that kind of information. Then get it. Ask him. You're the one he's obsessed with. Use it. I'm not going to manipulate him. You already are. The question is whether you're doing it for me or for yourself. He hung up. Ishe sat in the dark apartment, shaking. Sua found her there an hour later. I can't do this, Ishe whispered. Then don't. But my scholarship. We'll figure something out. But Eshe, if you keep doing this, you're going to lose yourself. And maybe lose him too if he actually matters to you. He shouldn't matter to me. But he does. Eshe covered her face with her hands. Sua was right. Somewhere along the way, between the tea and the archive and the quiet conversations, Kang-jun had started to matter, and she was betraying him. The next day, Kang-jun asked her to dinner, not the partnership dinner from before, a real one. There's a restaurant near the river, he said. It's quiet. The food is good. I'd like to take you there. As she knew she should say no, instead she said, Okay. I need to pause here and ask you something. Are you Team Ishe or Team Chaos? Because this girl is about to have dinner with a man she's spying on, and I genuinely don't know if that's brave or reckless. Drop a comment and let me know what you think. And if you're feeling this story, share it with someone who loves a good mess wrapped in a love story. Now let's get back to this disaster waiting to happen. The restaurant was everything he'd promised. Traditional Korean hanok architecture, low tables, private rooms separated by rice paper screens. Kang-jun had reserved the quietest room in the back. They sat across from each other, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked nervous. I don't do this often, he said. Eat dinner? Dinner with someone I actually want to know. Her heart squeezed. The food came. They ate slowly, talking about everything except the things that mattered. He told her about learning to play piano as a child and hating every minute. She told him about her first attempt at sewing, a skirt so lopsided her grandmother had laughed until she cried. The conversation was easy, natural, and Eshe felt the guilt crushing her chest with every word. Can I ask you something, he said. Yes. Why did you come to Seoul alone? No family. No safety net. That takes either courage or desperation. Maybe both. Which was it? She considered lying, then didn't. My father didn't think I was good enough. He never said it directly, but I knew. So I came here to prove him wrong, and maybe to prove something to myself, too. Have you? I don't know yet. Ask me when I defend my thesis. He smiled. I'll be there if you want me to be. You don't even know when it is. Tell me and I'll be there. The sincerity in his voice nearly broke her. Kang-jun, she started. Yes? She wanted to tell him. About Tae-young, about the threats, about everything. But fear stopped her. Thank you, she said instead. For this, for all of it. He reached across the table like he might take her hand, then stopped himself. I know I didn't start this the right way, he said quietly. Following you, using resources to find you. But I'm trying to do better. To be someone you'd choose to spend time with. Not someone you feel trapped by. I don't feel trapped right now. Good. That's all I want. For you to choose to be here. They left the restaurant 2 hours later, walking slowly toward the river. The Han River at night was beautiful. Lights reflected on the water. Couples walked hand in hand. They stood at the railing, not quite touching. Eesh, she looked up at him. I'm not good at this, he said, at being close to someone without trying to control the outcome. But I want to try, with you. Why me? I don't know. I just know that when I'm near you, I feel like a person instead of a position. And I haven't felt that in a long time. She should have walked away. Instead, she said, I feel that too. He looked at her like she'd given him something precious. And then he kissed her. It was gentle, careful, a question more than a demand. She let herself have 5 seconds of it. Then she pulled back. I can't, she whispered. Why not? Because there are things you don't know. Things I haven't told you. Then tell me. I can't, not yet. He studied her face. Are you in trouble? I don't know. Maybe. Let me help. You can't help with this. Esh, please, just give me some time. I need to figure something out. He didn't push. Just nodded slowly. Take the time you need, but I'm here when you're ready. She walked away before she could do something stupid like cry. When she got home, Sua took one look at her face and pulled her into a hug. What happened? He kissed me, and I'm spying on him for his cousin, who's blackmailing me, and I'm falling for him anyway. And I don't know how to fix any of this. Sua pulled back. Okay. Then we stop trying to play their game. We build our own. How? We document everything. Every text from Tae-young. Every threat. Every piece of proof that he's blackmailing you. We make copies. We encrypt it. We send it to people who can hold it safely. And then what? Then you tell Kang Jun the truth, and you let him choose what to do with it. What if he doesn't believe me? Then at least you'll know, and you can stop living in this nightmare. Ishii took a shaky breath. Sua was right. She couldn't keep doing this, so she started documenting everything. Screenshots of every message from Tae-young. Timestamps. A written record of every conversation, every threat, every demand. She sent encrypted files to 3 people. Sua, Professor and Kosis back in South Africa, and a journalist friend of Sua's who worked for an international news site. It took her 4 days, and when she was done, she had a file that told the whole story. She sat in her apartment, looking at it on her laptop. Then she made a decision. She was going to tell Kang Jun everything. Not because she trusted him completely, but because she was done being a piece in someone else's game. She sent him a message. I need to meet with you, privately. It's urgent. He responded within minutes. Tomorrow, my office. Whatever time works for you. She wrote back, 10 a.m. The next morning, Ishe stood outside Seo Group headquarters for the second time. This time, she wasn't nervous. She was determined. She rode the elevator to the 23rd floor, carrying a USB drive in her pocket. Young and Sue met her at the door. Miss Lamini, he's waiting for you. She walked into Kang Jun's office. He stood when she entered, his expression concerned. Esh, what's wrong? She crossed the room and set the USB drive on his desk. I need to tell you something, and after I do, you're going to have to decide what kind of man you are. He looked at the drive, then at her. I'm listening. She took a breath and told him everything. Kang Jun didn't speak for a long time. He stood behind his desk, reading the contents of the USB drive on his computer screen. His face was completely blank, but Aishi could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened with each new message he read. She'd told him everything. About Tae-young approaching her at the library, the threats about her visa, the demands for information, the other women who'd disappeared, Camila's story, all of it. Now she waited. The silence stretched so long she thought she might scream. Finally, he closed the laptop. How long? His voice was quiet. 2 weeks. And you gave him information. Small things, where you had lunch, general schedule stuff. Nothing important. I tried to keep it vague. But you were going to give him more. It wasn't a question. He asked about Singapore. About your acquisition deal. I told him no. When? 3 days ago. Kang Jun turned to look at her. His expression was unreadable, and for the first time since she'd met him, she was genuinely afraid of what he was thinking. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm tired of being used. By him. And I couldn't keep lying to you. You could have. I wouldn't have known. Yes, you would have. Eventually. And I didn't want to be another woman who disappeared from your life because your family decided I wasn't suitable. Something flickered in his eyes. Is that what you think happened? That I let them disappear? I don't know. Camila said you tried to help her, but in the end, she still left. He crossed his arms. Camila left because my aunt gave her 200 million won and a plane ticket. I didn't know about it until she was already gone. By the time I found out, she'd signed an NDA and blocked my number. Ishii's stomach twisted. You didn't let her go. No, but I also didn't fight hard enough to keep her. I was angry at my family for interfering, but I let them win because fighting them felt impossible. He paused. I regret that. And now I'm more angry than I've been in years. He picked up his phone. Jung and Soo, I need you in my office. And get legal on standby. He hung up and looked at Eshe. I'm going to handle this. But I need to know something first. What? Do you want to stay in Seoul? The question caught her off guard. What? Your thesis, your work. Do you want to finish it here, or would you rather transfer somewhere safer? I want to stay. This is where my research is. This is where I chose to be, even knowing what my family is capable of. Your family isn't the only thing in Seoul. His expression softened just slightly. Good, then we do this properly. Young and Soo entered the office moments later. Kong Jun gestured to Ishe. Miss Lamini has been blackmailed by Tae Young. He threatened her visa and scholarship unless she spied on me. I want her moved to a government scholarship program immediately. One with no connection to CO Foundation. And Soo didn't even blink. I'll make the calls. And I want a legal review of every foreign student's scholarship our foundation has touched in the last 5 years. If this happened to Eshe, it's happened to others. Understood. One more thing. I need a meeting with my grandmother. Today. Soo nodded and left. Ishi stared at Kang Jun. You're really doing this. Did you think I wouldn't? I didn't know. You said yourself that fighting your family feels impossible. It did. But that was before someone walked into my office and handed me proof that my own cousin has been using the family name to terrorize vulnerable women. His eyes met hers. You were brave to tell me. The least I can do is be brave enough to fix it. Her throat tightened. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get complicated. He had no idea how right he was. 3 hours later, Aishi sat in the back of Kong Jun's car as they drove to his grandmother's house in Songbuk. She's going to ask you questions, Kang Jun warned. She doesn't do small talk. What kind of questions? Personal ones. She'll want to know if you're here because of me or because of your work. What should I say? The truth. She has a radar for lies. The house was traditional Korean architecture, massive and beautiful, surrounded by gardens that looked like they required a full-time staff. A housekeeper led them to a sitting room where an elderly woman sat drinking tea. Seo Younghwa looked exactly like someone who'd built an empire. Small, elegant, with eyes that saw everything. She studied Eshe for a long moment. So you're the textile student. Yes, ma'am, sit. Eshe sat. Kang Jun remained standing, which seemed to amuse his grandmother. She makes you nervous, Younghwa said to him. Good. You need someone who makes you nervous. Grandmother, we have a situation. I know. Tae Young has been running his mouth around the family about how you've gone soft over a foreign girl. I assume this is about that. Kang Jun handed her the USB drive. It's worse than gossip. Younghwa plugged it into a laptop on the table beside her and read in silence. Her expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He used the family foundation to blackmail her. Yes, and there have been others. We're investigating that now. Younghwa looked at Aishe. Why did you agree to help him? Because I was scared. My entire life here depends on that scholarship. I didn't have any power. And now? You have power now. You have evidence. You have my grandson's protection. Why not just take the easy path and let us handle it quietly? Eshe met her eyes. Because it's not just about me. If he did this to other women and got away with it, he'll do it again. Someone needs to say no. Younghwa smiled. It was sharp and approving. I like her, she said to Kang Jun. Don't mess this up. I'm trying not to. Good. She closed the laptop. Here's what's going to happen. Tae Young will be removed from any position that gives him access to scholarship decisions. He'll be reassigned somewhere far from Seoul where he can't hurt anyone else. And every woman he's done this to will receive a formal apology and financial compensation if they want it. He'll fight back, Kong Jun said. Let him try. I control the board votes. He forgets that. Younghwa looked at Eshe again. As for you, your scholarship will be moved to a government program by end of business today. Your visa will be flagged as protected status, which means no one can touch it without going through 3 levels of immigration review. You'll finish your thesis without interference. Thank you. Don't thank me. You did the hard part. You walked into a room full of people more powerful than you and told the truth. That takes spine. She poured more tea. Now go. I need to talk to my grandson alone. Ishi stood and bowed slightly, then left the room. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and tried to catch her breath. It was happening. It was actually happening. She wasn't going to be deported. She wasn't going to lose everything. Inside the room, she could hear muffled voices. Kang Jun and his grandmother talking in Korean, too fast for her to follow. 10 minutes later, Kang Jun emerged. Let's go. They got back in the car. What did she say? Esh asked. That I have one chance to do this right. If I let the family push you out, she'll never forgive me. And if you don't let them push me out, then I'm choosing something for myself for the first time in my life. And she thinks that's long overdue. Ishi looked out the window. This is a lot. I know. Your cousin is going to hate you. He already does. Your family is going to talk. They always do. She turned to look at him. Why are you doing this? Because you handed me a way out and asked for nothing in return. Because you were honest when you could have kept lying. And because I'm tired of living in a cage I pretend doesn't exist. The car pulled up to her apartment building. Ishi reached for the door handle, then stopped. What happens next? Tomorrow, I confront Tae-young. After that, the board meeting. Then we see what breaks and what holds. And us. He looked at her carefully. I meant what I said at the river. I want to try, but I understand if this is too much. If you want space while the family drama plays out, I won't blame you. I don't want space. No? No. But I need to know you're doing this because it's right, not just because of me. It's both. Is that allowed? She smiled despite everything. Yeah, that's allowed. She got out of the car and watched him drive away. Sua was waiting inside. Well? His grandmother is terrifying and amazing. Tae-young is getting shipped off somewhere far away. My scholarship is safe. And I think I'm officially dating the CEO of CO Group. Except we haven't actually called it that. Sua hugged her hard. You did it. We're not done yet. Tomorrow is going to be a mess. Then we prepare for the mess. The next morning, Kang Jun called Tae-young into his office. Aisha wasn't there, but Young and Sue told her about it later. Tae-young had walked in confident, apparently expecting another lecture about family loyalty. Instead, Kang Jun had played the recordings, every text message, every threat, every piece of evidence Eshe had collected. According to In-soo, Tae-young had gone pale. You want to know the worst part? Kang Jun had said. You didn't do this because you wanted power. You did it because you're petty, because you saw something I cared about and wanted to destroy it just to prove you could. Tae-young had tried to argue. Said Eshe was a nobody, that she'd been using Kang Jun for money, that he'd been protecting the family reputation. Kang Jun had cut him off. You're done. Grandmother has reassigned you to the Jakarta office, effective immediately. You'll have no access to scholarship programs, no board votes, and no authority to make hiring or firing decisions. You'll do exactly what you're told, and if you step out of line even once, I'll release every piece of evidence Eshe collected to the press. Do you understand? Tae-young had understood. He'd left the building an hour later. Ishi got a text from an unknown number that afternoon. You think you've won, but he'll get tired of you eventually. They all do. She blocked the number and deleted the message. She wasn't going to let Tae-young live in her head anymore. A week passed. Ishi's scholarship transferred smoothly. Her visa was updated. The university confirmed her thesis timeline was on track, and slowly, carefully, she and Kang Jun started building something real. He took her to dinner twice that week. Not fancy restaurants, just quiet places where they could talk. They went to a textile market in Dongdaemun and she showed him how to identify hand-stitching versus machine work. He bought her lunch from a street cart and laughed when she got sauce on her nose. It was normal, easy. For the first time, he felt like just a person, and she felt like she could breathe. 2 weeks after everything exploded, Kang Jun invited her to the archive again. But this time, when she arrived, he wasn't working. He was standing in the middle of the room, looking nervous. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing's wrong. I wanted to show you something. He led her to the back of the archive, to a section she hadn't explored yet. On the table sat a piece of fabric she'd never seen before. It was a fusion piece, Korean pojagi patchwork, combined with what looked like African waxprint fabric, stitched together with incredible precision. Did you make this? She whispered. No, my grandmother did. 40 years ago when she was traveling in West Africa. She met a seamstress in Ghana who taught her about the symbolism in the patterns. She tried to blend the techniques when she came home. It's the only piece like it in our collection. Ishii touched the fabric gently. The colors were faded but still vibrant. The stitching was perfect. Why are you showing me this? Because you said fusion isn't theft, that honoring two traditions at once creates something new. And I wanted you to know that my grandmother believed that too, long before she met you. Eshi looked up at him. She approves of me. She more than approves. She told me if I let you go, she'd write me out of her will. Esh laughed. She did not. She absolutely did. She also said you have more sense than anyone I've ever dated, and that I should listen to you more often. Your grandmother is very wise. He stepped closer. Eshi, I know the last few weeks have been chaotic, and I know I'm still figuring out how to do this without falling back into old patterns. But I need you to know something. What? You're not a project to me. You're not something I'm trying to acquire or control. You're someone I want to know, someone I want to choose to be with, and I'm going to keep choosing that, even when it's hard. Her chest felt warm. I choose that too. Yeah? Yeah. He smiled, and it was real and unguarded and maybe the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Can I kiss you? He asked. You're asking this time. I'm learning. She reached up and kissed him first. It was slow and sweet and nothing like the first kiss by the river. This one didn't have fear attached, just possibility. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. I'm still scared sometimes, she admitted. Of what? That your world is too big, that I'll get lost in it. Then we make sure you don't. We set boundaries, we check in. We figure it out together. Together. They stood in the archive, surrounded by fabric and history and the quiet promise of something new, and Ishe felt something she hadn't felt in months. Safe. Not because someone was protecting her, but because she'd protected herself, and found someone who respected that. Before we get to the ending, I need to know something. Has this story given you butterflies? Have you been rooting for Ishe and Kang Jun? If you've made it this far, you're part of this journey. So hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Because I've got more stories like this coming. Stories about women who refuse to be small, and men who learn to love without controlling. Now let's finish this right. 6 months later, Eshi stood in front of a panel of professors at Seoul National University and defended her thesis. Threads of Connection, a comparative study of Korean pojagi and Zulu beadwork as narrative textile traditions. She'd spent 6 months researching, writing, and revising. The archive access Kang Jun had provided had been invaluable, but the work itself was all hers. She presented her findings with steady hands and a clear voice. She showed slides of the fusion pieces she'd created. Korean patchwork techniques using African wax prints. Zulu beadwork patterns incorporated into traditional pojagi designs. The professors asked hard questions. She answered everyone. When it was over, the lead professor smiled. Miss Dlamini, it is the panel's pleasure to inform you that you've passed with distinction. Congratulations, Dr. Dlamini. The room tilted. She'd done it. She walked out of the examination room in a daze. Sua was waiting in the hallway and screamed when she saw Ishi's face. You passed? I passed. They hugged and jumped and cried, and Eshi felt like she was floating. Then she saw him. Kongjun stood at the end of the hallway, holding flowers. She'd told him when the defense was, but she hadn't expected him to come. He'd had meetings all day. Apparently, he'd canceled them. She walked over to him, still shaky from adrenaline. You came. I told you I would. I passed. I know. Congratulations, Dr. Dlamini. Hearing him say it made it real. She started crying again. He pulled her into a hug right there in the university hallway and let her cry into his very expensive suit. When she finally pulled back, he handed her the flowers. These are beautiful. The woman at the shop said they represent new beginnings. That's very fitting. They walked out of the building together, into the late spring sunshine. So what now, he asked. Now I figure out what comes next. Maybe I apply for postdoctoral positions. Maybe I start the fashion line I've been sketching. Maybe I go home to South Africa for a while and see my grandmother. And us? She looked up at him. What about us? Do I factor into the what comes next? Do you want to? Yes, even if I leave Seoul for a bit. Even then, we'll figure it out. She smiled. You've gotten good at that phrase. Which one? We'll figure it out. You used to need to control everything. Now you're okay with not knowing. I have a good teacher. They walked toward the Han River, the same route they'd taken the night he'd first kissed her. I'm staying in Seoul for now, Eshe said. I got offered a teaching position at the university. Just part-time, but it'll let me keep working on my designs. That's amazing. And I found a studio space in Bukshan. It's small, but the light is perfect. The one I showed you? No, a different one I found myself. One I can afford with my own money, he smiled. Good, but I'd still like to use your archive sometimes, for research. It's yours whenever you want it. They reached the river and stood at the railing. Esh looked at the water, at the city stretching out beyond it, and felt overwhelmingly grateful. 6 months ago, she'd been terrified, trapped between two men playing power games and trying desperately not to lose everything she'd worked for. Now she had her doctorate, her independence, her future, and somehow she also had this, a relationship built on choice instead of control, with a man who was learning to be human instead of untouchable. What are you thinking? Kang Jun asked. That I'm happy, good. Are you? He considered the question. I'm learning to be. You were right that day in my office. I didn't know the difference between wanting something and controlling it. I'm still learning. But yes, I think I'm happy. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Thank you, she said. For what? For listening when I told you the truth. For believing me. For fighting for something instead of just accepting what your family wanted. Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me, and for not giving up on me when I didn't know what I was doing. They stood there as the sun set over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Ish thought about the day this had all started, crouched beside a car, fixing her dress with pins, completely unaware that someone was watching. She'd been so worried about being helpless. But she hadn't been helpless at all. She'd been strong enough to walk away, brave enough to come back, smart enough to protect herself when she needed to. And she'd found someone who saw that strength and didn't try to diminish it. Esh? I love you. She lifted her head to look at him. He looked nervous, like he wasn't sure if he'd said it right. I love you too, she said. His whole face softened. Yeah? Yeah. He kissed her as the sun disappeared behind the buildings, and as she felt certain of something she'd doubted for a long time. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. Not because someone had chosen her, but because she'd chosen herself first, and everything else had followed. 3 years later, Eshe stood in her studio in Bukchon, preparing for her first solo fashion exhibition. The collection was called Through Glass, a tribute to the moment that had changed everything. Each piece blended Korean and African textile traditions. Pojagi patchwork met Zulu beadwork. Traditional wrapping cloths became modern dresses. Ancient techniques created something entirely new. The exhibition was sponsored by 3 organizations: the Korean Arts Council, the South African Embassy, and the Sesio Cultural Foundation, which had been completely restructured after Tai Young's removal, now genuinely supported cross-cultural artistic exchange. Sua helped her hang the final pieces. You did it, her friend said. You actually did it. We did it. I couldn't have survived the last 3 years without you. Please. You're the one who stared down a billionaire and his evil cousin. I just provided snacks and moral support. Isha laughed. The door to the studio opened, and Kang Jun walked in, carrying coffee. How's it going? Almost ready. The exhibition opens tomorrow. He looked around at the pieces, his expression proud. It's incredible, Ish. Really. Thank you. For everything. For the archive access. For introducing me to artisans. For believing this could work. You would have made it work without me. Maybe. But it was better with you. He kissed her forehead. Grandmother is coming to the opening tomorrow. She wants to buy 3 pieces. She doesn't have to do that. Try telling her no. I dare you. Aishe smiled. Life had settled into something beautiful. She taught twice a week at the university. Worked on her designs the rest of the time. Kang Jun had stepped back from some of his CEO responsibilities to focus on projects he actually cared about, including a new foundation supporting immigrant artists in Seoul. They had dinner with his grandmother once a month. Ishi video called her own grandmother in Durban every week. They'd learned to build a life that honored both of their worlds. Are you nervous about tomorrow? Kang Jun asked. Terrified. You're going to be brilliant. You have to say that. You're biased. I'm biased and correct. She laughed and leaned into him. Tomorrow, her work would be seen by critics and collectors and people who mattered in the fashion world. But tonight, she was just here, in her studio, with the people who'd helped her get here, and that was enough. The next evening, the exhibition opened. The gallery was packed. Critics, artists, students, embassy officials. Esh wore a dress she'd designed herself. Korean silk with African wax print details. A perfect representation of everything she'd worked for. She stood near the entrance, shaking hands, answering questions, trying not to pass out from nerves. Kong Jun stayed close, but not too close. Present, but not overwhelming. He'd learned where the line was, and she'd learned to let him be part of her success without making him the center of it. Halfway through the evening, a young woman approached her. She looked nervous. Dr. Dlamini? Yes, I'm a textile student at Iwa University. I'm from Nigeria. I saw your thesis published last year, and it changed everything for me. I thought I had to choose between my culture and Korean design, but you showed it's possible to honor both. Aishi's throat tightened. What's your name? Anita. Anita, can I give you my contact information? I'm always looking for talented students to mentor. The girl's eyes went wide. Really? Really? What you're trying to do matters. Don't let anyone tell you it doesn't. Anita left with Ishi's business card clutched in her hand, looking like she'd been given a treasure. Su-ah appeared at Esh's elbow. You're crying. I'm not crying. You're absolutely crying. Okay, fine. I'm crying. But that girl reminded me of why I started this. It's not just about pretty clothes. It's about showing people that they don't have to choose, that they can be all of who they are. You're going to make me cry too. They hugged, and Eshi felt overwhelmingly grateful.